He becomes only the second guy to beat Hulk Hogan for the world title. Of course, the first being the Ultimate Warrior. They did the screw job thing with the twin evil referee and did a tournament, and that's how Savage got it. But a year later, of course, Hogan got it back. But since January of 84, there had been two guys to pin Hulk Hogan to become the World Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion. And that was the Ultimate Warrior and now the Undertaker. So here we are, just a couple years less than that, removed from him leaving WCW. I mean, he's going to finish up WCW in 1990. And by the end of 91, he's the world champ. And he beat Hulk Hogan. Like, I don't think people, because, the WCW era, a lot of people beat Hulk Hogan. But in the WWF, when he was the guy back in the day, for the mainstream rock and wrestling push, to get a win over Hulk Hogan and become champion, that's a big doggone deal.
Big accomplishment, no doubt about it. Well, it goes back to what I said earlier about Vince had great confidence in the character. He was born and bred in WWE. Vince was sold on the quote unquote gimmick. And if Vince had not been so sold on it, I don't know where we'd be today talking about Taker. But McMahon helped make Taker the star that he is by giving him opportunities that maybe other bookers would not do. Vince was willing to think outside the box, look at all the sizzle that Taker was going to bring with him with his new persona. So it's all good stuff, and and Vince made the right move. Vince's instincts work like a champion right there, and well, there you see another shot, a good shot of Paul Bearer. God bless him.
Talk to me a little.
Had all those issues with his weight that we tried to address. But he was a huge asset, was Paul Bearer to Taker. There's no doubt.
Let's talk a little bit about that Undertaker Hulk Hogan match, because this has been something of wrestling lore for a long time. And I know you weren't there, but I'm curious if it ever came up in your conversations with Mark about any potential hurt feelings about that title switch, because I think a lot of our listeners know the finish was when he beat Hogan for the world title. Flair slides a chair in the ring, and there's a tombstone pile driver on top of the chair. There's several inches, maybe 8 to 12 inches between Hogan's head and the mat. But Hogan, allegedly, according to the rumor and innuendo, would claim that Undertaker had hurt him for real with this tombstone. Now, when Undertaker first starts doing that move, like with Coco Beware and others, people did have a claim for that. He was figuring out how to do it. But boy, he knew he had the golden goose in his arms, and Hogan's head was nowhere near the mat. But that wouldn't keep Hogan, allegedly, from claiming that he was hurt and going to the hospital and all this other stuff. And I guess, after, Taker has his real life family there to celebrate it, and this is this big moment and this high watermark that you've become the world champion and you're so young and you beat Hulk Hogan, et cetera, et cetera. And now that's seemingly tarnished. I know years later, Hogan would come back to the WWE at the time. And the Undertaker was no longer a young guy trying to make his bones. He was the locker room leader, well established at that point. Do you remember there being any sort of hurt feelings expressed to you about what happened in 91 with the supposed neck injury?
No, not really, Conrad. I'm a little surprised that this was a development. I'd never heard of Taker hurting anybody.
Because he didn't.
He was skilled. I've taken punches from him before that were the best punches I've ever received. He was just that careful and safe. And so I haven't heard that story. It sounds to me like it's a fictionalized account of what went on, and it gave Hogan an out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my opinion. It's not worth any more than that. It's an opinion, but I've never heard of Taker hurting anybody. So, including Hulk Hogan or anybody else. So it was interesting, to say the least. I think Hogan was maybe trying to book his own return with Taker.
Yeah.
And there's not a bad shot of it.
I mean, you can see it's nowhere near. And I think Undertaker carried a lot of hurt feelings for Hulk Hogan sort of ruining the moment and claiming that perhaps he was dangerous. But as you see, he's even got him hooked under the shoulder, not around the waist. Like he couldn't have been more careful in delivering the move.
Right.
And it just, I wondered if you had heard anything, but maybe Taker is who we thought he is, the Clint Eastwood. He's not going to be loud about
No.
that sort of thing. Your first interaction with him as this Undertaker persona is at WrestleMania 9. We've
Right.
covered that in the archives at GrillingJR on YouTube.com. He's going to be working with Giant Gonzalez, something that Bruce says Undertaker will never let him live down.
Right.
For whatever
and nor
reason.
should he. And nor should he.
Yeah.
That was poor. Gonzalez was overbooked. He wasn't ready for that spotlight, but his size made it happen.
Yes.
And it's it looked good on a poster. I'll say that. But other than that, all the hats, my black hats, are all off to Taker for being able to pull something out of that match against a guy that didn't have an aptitude for wrestling. Just and he wasn't ready. But that's what was booked. And you're right about WrestleMania 9. That was my first WWE live event. How a nice way to make a debut for me, anyway. And but it was a challenge for Taker to get something out of Gonzalez. They only did a few things that like you would do. You want to do things that work to the wrestler's strength. And unfortunately, Gonzalez didn't have a lot of strengths. But Taker made something out of that match that a lot of other guys would not have had the patience or the diligence to do. So it was a interesting day in Vegas at Caesar's Palace, to say the least.
Let's talk about some other interesting days. Royal Rumble 94, you're going to be there for that. It's going to take 12 men to put The Undertaker in the casket for his match with Yokozuna. And then he rises up and cuts a promo on the video screen before descending into the heavens. And listen, we've talked about it a lot here on the show. You have to suspend your disbelief at times to be a professional wrestling fan, but
correct.
This was a little out there. I mean, the Undertaker character, you give some creative license to. What did you think of the Undertaker descending to heaven, or whatever the imagery was there at Royal Rumble 94?
Well, it was challenging. Sometimes it's hard to buy because it was so unique and different. But Taker did a great job of that, communicating that to the audience of what was really going on. So, but it was different. It was unique. And it was, like I said before here on the show, wrestling fans like new, they like surprises, and they like for the booking to stay one step ahead of the crowd. And he did that. He kept reinventing himself and adding new wrinkles to his game that ended up being very positive wrinkles. And he did a great job there. Quite frankly, just did a great job because he didn't rest on his laurels. That character, he could have settled into a routine, and there's no doubt he had a routine to some degree, but he was just constantly trying to add another pitch. If you're a baseball player and you're throwing the heat, somewhere along the way you got to let up on it a little bit and manipulate the strike zone. And Taker was always willing to try new pitches, shall we say? So, but he had no issues doing that. He just, I think that's really important. All the great stars that I've seen in my career, 50 years now, he was one of the leaders of that revolution. Continued to get better and to add new wrinkles to his game. I think that was important, and it's still important today. Wrestlers today cannot rest on their routines and their move sets, memorizing them. They need to do them when they're these new moves and these new setups that the fans can buy into, that connect the dots to that character. And he always connected the dots, and he was smart. Taker was just he had a feel for his gimmick that nobody else did, and he was able to manipulate that gimmick is something special and extraordinary. And all of a sudden, you do it well enough, uh, you're you're ahead of the game. And so Taker was always, to me, ahead of the game.